Masechet Ketubot, Daf Gimel. Here is an outline of what we've seen so far and what we're going to see today. We saw a principle yesterday that duress is considered a good excuse for delaying food obligations of the ketubah. A husband is required to feed his wife from the time of nisu'in. However, if for some reason the nisu'in, the wedding ceremony, has to be delayed and it's out of his hands, he was sick or she was sick, or because it was scheduled to, the year came up on Monday, but then I have to wait till Wednesday. For any of those reasons, that's not just because he decided he wants to have more time. He does not have to start paying the food obligations immediately. He can wait. He says, I wanted to have the wedding. It was out of my hands that I had to delay the wedding, so I'm not paying until the actual wedding. All right. And then yesterday we applied this to Rava applied this and said, how about with get? Is the same true or not? So we're going to see two versions of Rava. The first one we already saw. And he says, duress, unlike ketubah, does not matter with the conditional get. If a man says, here is your get if I do not return within the next 12 months. And let's say he wants to return, but he gets sick, he gets kidnapped, he's unable, the flight's canceled, and he doesn't come back. We say, sorry, but the condition is fulfilled, the get is valid, even though you tried your best and didn't want it to be. We just go with the actual facts. Are you here or are you not? We tried 3 attempted proofs that this is true, rejected all of them, and in the end we said Rava came up with this because of his own reasoning. If we say that duress counts, then it'll lead to a lot of confusing situations where a modest woman may say, well, he didn't come back, but who knows, maybe it's under duress, maybe he's delayed somehow, so I'm not going to get remarried, and then she won't get remarried her whole life, she'll remain in aguna. Or the other hand, if a person doesn't come back, the woman will say, well, I guess he didn't want to come back, and she'll go and remarry immediately, while not taking into account the possibility that maybe it really was under duress and the get is not valid. So you can make an error either way, because we don't know if he's not back, we don't know if it's under duress or not, and then we'll be in the case in doubt for a long time. Okay, so therefore, Rava said it's impossible to have a legal system where you're going to take this into account. We have to know one way or another, and therefore we do not count duress. You should have put that into the clause if you thought that this might be a problem. All right, that's where we are now. We're going to go have a little discussion on how could the rabbis do this if in fact mideoraita the get is not valid. How could the Rabbanan come and uproot a kiddushin? Then we're going to see a second version of Rava. The opposite of this one, that duress does cancel a conditional get, and the same 3 baraitot that we brought as proofs, when mishnayot, we're going to bring them as disproofs, attempted disproofs, but they will end without an absolute final answer. Then we're going to see back to the main Mishnah, the rule that the Wednesday rule that all weddings should be on Wednesdays. It does not apply in the following cases when the courts do not meet on Monday and Wednesday. There's no point in making the wedding on Wednesday if the courts do not meet on Monday and Thursday. And we'll see other times when there were cases of danger and duress, also when there were changes to the Wednesday rule. All right, so we begin right here. Umi ika midi de medoraita la leheve get. Umishum senuot, umishum pirusot, sharenan eshet ish le'alma. So now a question to Rava. According to you, you said that the rabbis make this takana. And on a deoraita level, if a condition is not fulfilled because of duress, then we take duress into account and we say, you know what, the get is invalid. And so therefore the person is still married. And now you're saying that the rabbis came and said, well, this is not workable situation, but to not know whether he came back because he didn't want to come back or because of duress. And therefore we're going to not take duress into account and assume that the condition is fulfilled, and therefore it is a good get, and now she's going to remarry. she's going to remarry, even though on the Doraita level, she's still married to the previous guy. How could that be? So is there anything that from the Torah, it's not a get? And because of the modest woman, or because of the promiscuous women that are looking to get out of their marriage and go be with somebody else, we're going to now just say that, oh yes, the previous marriage is nothing, and we permit someone who actually is biblically married to the previous husband, permit her to go and be married to a second person? And the answer is in because everyone who does kiddushin does so on the basis of the sages. We say kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, according to the law instituted by Moshe and Yisrael. That means not only the biblical law, but also the way the rabbis have legislated it throughout the generations. And since he's doing that kiddushin on that condition, therefore the rabbis have the ability to go ahead and uproot the original kiddushin. So it's not that they can say this get is valid when on a biblical level it's not valid, but what they can do is say your original first marriage, we are undoing it and you were never married. You don't have to worry about the kids that they had. They are not mamzerim because she was not a eshet ish. It just means that she was not married. She was a pinuya. She was single. That does not produce mamzerim. So the rabbis, yes, in fact, have the power to do that. Amar le Ravina le Rav Ashi tenach kadish bechaspa kadish bi'a ma'ika lemeimar. So Ravina says to Rav Ashi, I understand how the rabbis can have that power if he does kiddushin with money or with a ring, and because that's the way we always do it nowadays. Because the rabbis have the power to change money's hands. Hefker betin hefker. If a betin comes and says this is no longer your money, like we have today, eminent domain, the government can come and say, sorry, we need this land for a highway, we're kicking you off. So too, the rabbis have the power over the currency to say this is no longer yours, and therefore that ring or that coin that the husband gave to his wife for kiddushin, they could say it was never yours. Since it wasn't yours, your kiddushin is invalid. Fine, I understand how they could do it in such a case. But if he does kiddushin with bi'ah, that's actually the biblical way of performing kiddushin, is with a one-time bi'ah to acquire her, to say she is prohibited to all other men. So the first one, the one that done with money, is a derabanan method of doing kiddushin. This is a deoraita method of doing kiddushin. So how could the rabbis undo that? And the answer is they can. They can redefine that bi'ah as a promiscuous bi'ah. Although at the time he did, and he said he had in mind that this bi'ah would be for the purpose of kiddushin. The rabbis can redefine it and say it was a bi'ah, but it was not for kiddushin, and therefore you were never married. They do have that power. Okay, so that concludes the first version of Rava that says duress does not matter. But now we're going to go to the second version where everything is the opposite. Duress does cancel the get. He wanted to come, and he wasn't able to because he was sick or something. It's just like with ketubah. Duress means he doesn't have to pay the ketubah food obligation right away. So to here, duress can in fact cancel the condition, and the get will not take effect. So he says, just like with the ketubah, so too regarding gitin, we do take duress into account. There is honest, there is duress in the realm of conditional get. Metiveh, we have a challenge from the Mishnah in Gitin. Hareze gitechim lo bati mikan v'ad 12 chodesh. Umet betoch 12 chodesh eno get. Someone gives a get to his wife and says, I'm giving you this get on condition that I do not return within 12 months. And turns out he dies within 12 months. This was commonly done if someone was going out to a dangerous place, to war, and they didn't want their wives to be aguna and unknown. So it turns out he did in fact die. So the condition was fulfilled because he didn't come back in 12 months. But nevertheless, we say eno get. The reason is because he didn't say from now. The get, when it comes to 12 months, we'll look at it now. Was the condition fulfilled? Yeah. Okay, but now he's dead. So a dead person cannot give a get, and therefore the get is invalid, even though he never came back, because he didn't say this will be a get retroactively from now if I don't come back. He said it'll be a get in 12 months if I don't come back at the 12-month point. Therefore, it's not a get. Now we say metu de'eno get hachala hareze get. Only if he dies, that's why it's not a get, because a dead person cannot issue a get. However, if he was sick, then it in fact would be a good get, right? So he's away, and because he's sick, so if he's sick, he's alive. So therefore, he is alive, and the condition was fulfilled that he did not come back, and therefore the get takes effect, and he is divorced. Even though he wanted to come back, it's not on purpose, it's just that he was sick and unable to come back. We do not take duress into account. So there's a challenge to Rava who said that we do take duress into account. Okay, so we answer, no, maybe in fact, if he gets sick, also it's not a get. Just like if he dies, it's not a get. For different reasons. If he dies, well, that's also duress. He couldn't have come back, but also he's dead, so a dead person can't give a get. In the case of when he's sick, it could be that, in fact, also it would not be a good get because it's under duress. He wanted to fulfill the condition, so we don't count it, not a get. So this could be consistent with Rava. And so in that case, how come the Mishnah mentions only mita, does not mention sickness? Vehi gufa kamashmalante and get lachar mita. Maybe you wanted to teach us this very fact that you cannot give a get posthumously, even if he gives it to someone else to give later and he dies, still no good. It has to be given while he's alive. All right, so that's why I mentioned that, even though it be true for sickness also. Wait a second. And get lachar mita hatana leresha. We already saw previously in that Mishnah in Gitin that get after death is no good. The Gemara does not quote it again. You can look yesterday for the full quote. If a person says, "Here is your get after I die," that's no good. So we already know that principle. So we answer, no, nevertheless, this Mishnah still could have mentioned died now to exclude the opinion of Rabbotenu. The opinion of Rabbotenu was that even if he doesn't say this, here's your get, if I don't come back with 12 months, even if he doesn't say retroactively from now, we still assume it's retroactive because we follow the date in the get. And the date in the get is current when he is alive, before he goes away on the trip. And so therefore, when he goes away and he doesn't come back because he's dead, then we say the get takes effect on the date, and he was alive on the date, so it's retroactive no matter what. That's because there is that opinion here in this Mishnah mentions the case of death in order to exclude, to say that this Mishnah does not agree with the opinion of Rabbotenu. So not only a get given after death, but even a get that's dated before, also the rabbis will say it's no good. Okay, so there is no disproof from here. So attempt number 2. Tashema. Me'achshav im lo batim mikan ve'ad 12 chodesh umet betoch 12 chodesh harei ze get. If he does say this, here's your get that will apply from now, retroactively, if I don't come back in 12 months, and he dies within the 12 months, that is a valid get. Good. And now we ask, wouldn't the law be the same if he was sick and was unable to come back within 12 months? Wouldn't we ignore the duress and say, sorry, you didn't come back, right? If we say that the person died, which is the ultimate duress, and was unable to come back, and therefore we say that the condition is fulfilled and the get applies. So too, if he doesn't come back because of a lesser duress, but that he was sick, we also say but you didn't come back. It doesn't matter if you did it on purpose or it was beyond your control. The fact is you did not come back, and that's why we will say the get applies, because you're not back. So you see from here that we do not take duress into account, and this challenges the second version of Rava, where he says that we do take duress into account. And we answer, Lo, metav kadlo nichalet tipol kamei avam. No, only the condition that he said to begin with was only because he's worried that he may die. If he dies, and assuming they don't have children, and he has a brother, he would prefer that the get apply before he dies, so that she will not have to fall to the avam, who's maybe a lowlife or whatever. But if he's actually alive but sick, then he would not want the condition to be fulfilled and the get to go ahead. That's not why he made it in the first place. Rather, he would come and say, no, I was sick. I never wanted to give the get in the first place. That wasn't my intention. And therefore, we'd have to take into account his intention that he was under duress. And the get therefore will be not valid, and so it's only valid if he dies and not if he's sick, because we do take duress into account. So we can explain this part of the Mishnah even according to the second version of Rava. And finally, the third disproof, Tashema me'ahuda amar lehu ilo atena mikan va'ad sheloshim yom lehevei gita. A man says, here is your get if I don't come back within 30 days. He doesn't say retroactively. Ata besof ta'atin yomin paskem avra. He came back, but he was on the other side of the river from the city where he lives, and he missed the ferry. And so he's there and said, but he can see right across the city where he lives. It says, look, I'm here, right? I'm coming back. I intend to come back. And therefore, do not apply the condition. The get should be as if I came back. The get should be invalid. Shmuel said, sorry, that's not considered returning. You did not fulfill the condition in the get, and therefore the get does apply, and he's divorced even though he's standing there. So this is a case of duress. He wanted to be back, but he couldn't come back. And we see we don't take duress into account. So this is a challenge to Rava, right? We say, answer unsa deshechiach shane dekevan deiba'ele la'atnuye ve'la'atne hu de'afsed anafsheh. No, this is a common circumstance. I mean, it is he wanted to be there, but he should have predicted that this happens. That you wait till last minute and come back, you may miss the ferry. So if he really wanted, he should have stipulated it within. Oh, also, if you see me that I'm coming back and I couldn't make it, or if I'm sick, or if I'm late, then also then I do not want that to be part of the condition, and I do not want the get to apply in such cases. He could have stipulated that, and so therefore he didn't. We have to follow the exact language. He said, if I don't come back, and he didn't come back. Therefore, this case is different. But if it was a case where something really beyond his control, like he was very sick and couldn't move and couldn't communicate, or he was captured, in those cases, maybe we would take the duress into account, and the get would not apply. And so that's it. That's where we leave it. Leave the discussion of Rava, and there's nothing about his own reasoning here, because it's the opposite. All right, halacha follows the first one, that duress does not matter, as we said, according to his own reasoning. And now we get to the next topic, which is the rule that Betula should be married on Wednesday. It did not always apply and will not always apply. Amar Rav Shemuel bar Yitzchak, lo shanu ela mitakanat Ezra va'ela achen batedin kibuin ela b'sheni v'chamishi. Says this halacha only applied from the time of the Takana of Ezra going forward, because because back then, before he made a Takana, there was the betin would meet all the time. So before the time of Ezra, there was no set date, right? Whenever you came to the town, you'd say, I need a betin, and they would go gather some people and they would meet. So that when that was true, a woman can get married any day. But when Ezra came in and made a takana, why to make a takana that they meet only on Monday and Thursday? That would seem to be less days of meeting. Shouldn't he make things better? It seems that when they were meeting every day, there wasn't always business to do every day, and so therefore they didn't really meet, and you had to have a hard time getting them together. Oh, there's someone here. Okay, call this guy, call that guy. So it wasn't as convenient by making set days, Monday and Thursday, and everybody knows that they will come on either of those days. So the betin will be there and they will be ready and active. So this was his takana. Therefore, before the takana, a woman could get married any day. Once he said they only meet on Monday and Thursday, that's when the halacha came into effect that the weddings should only be on Wednesday, so they'll be ready to come to the Beit Din on Thursday, should there be a claim of betulim. Now, Kodem Takanat Ezra, Mai Hava. Gemara asks on Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak, why are you telling me about ancient history? What do I care what happened before the Takanat Ezra? Whatever it was, it was. What do I need to know that for? Kekodem Takanat Ezra, Ishani said Bechol Yom. His point is that just like back then, if there should be a situation where the Beit Din meets in a different pattern like it did before the time of Ezra, then a woman can get married any day. And so that's true today. Today, Beit Din does not meet on Monday and Thursday. We don't have that rule. There are Beit Dinim, and one could convene them on any day equally, and therefore, nowadays is similar to the times before Ezra. In other words, this practice to marry on Wednesday is not it's standalone. It's dependent on the Batei Dinim and when they meet. Okay, so now next question. Haba'enan shakdu. We quoted the Tosefta already. Shemuel, remember, quoted a piece of it and said that why don't you get married on Sunday? Why don't we allow Betula to get married on Sunday? Because I wish you can come on Wednesday. And we said the rabbis are diligent. They want to make shakdu. They're diligent to make sure that the husband will make a really nice wedding. And so therefore they allow 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or he can prepare for the wedding and then have a nice wedding for her, for the bride, on Wednesday. If you have a wedding on Sunday, then that's a problem because that's going to be before Shabbat, and it's hard to prepare before Shabbat for Sunday. So now we're asking, wait a second, if the Beit Din is not, if the Batei Din meet every day, then what? You can make a wedding on Sunday, on Monday, but you're not going to have time to prepare the wedding properly. So the answer is no, it means a case where he did in fact already exert himself. The groom went last week and he made everything prepared even before Shabbat, and he didn't eat the food on Shabbat. He had separate meal for Shabbat and he was able to prepare. So that's why, if in fact he can do that, then yes, you can get married on any day. Happens to be nowadays, in at least our community, we do not make weddings on Saturday nights because there is no time to prepare before. So that's something that is not done nowadays. Okay, my shakadu. Now that we know that answer, we're going to go back and quote the Baraita in full, the one that Shemuel quoted, which is a Tosefta. So what is this? What is this law that the rabbi said that they were diligent to make sure the husband would make a wedding? Let's see the full source. Detanya mipnei ma amru betula niset liyom harevi'i. Why did they say that a betula should be married on Wednesday? They're quoting the early layer of the Mishnah, the first line of the Mishnah, and giving an answer. Because if the husband sees that there was no blood when he consummated on after the wedding night, he can come to Beit Din and said, "Hey, I paid for a betula. I gave the dower sum of 200 zuz, and look, she's not a betula." So then they want to deal with it right away, while the husband is still agitated about it, so that they can intervene and decide whatever they need to. The Tosefta itself says, why not marry on Sunday, and that way he can go to the Beit Din on Monday. And that's still right. It's still immediately after. Shaktu chachamim al takanat benot Yisrael shehadam torech b's'oda shelosha yamim chad b'Shabbat v'sheni b'Shabbat v'shlishi b'Shabbat u'revi'i konsa. So the rabbis were diligent regarding the benefit for the brides of Israel that a man should busy himself preparing for the wedding ceremony feast for 3 days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and therefore on Wednesday everything will be ready and he can make the wedding. Okay, good. So we answered the question about what this shakdu is, but now we continue and quote the Tosefta in full. Umisakana ve'elach nahagul ha'am lichnos b'shlishi ve'lo michu biyadam chachamim. There was some danger. We're going to define what that danger is. When there was a time of danger, the people themselves, they took upon themselves the custom to move their weddings from from Wednesday to Tuesday. The rabbis did not initiate it, but once it was done, the rabbis did not reprimand them. They said, it's all right. Ubasheni lo yichnos. However, going back Tuesday, they were tolerant of, but going back to Monday, no, that is no good. One should not do that. That the rabbis objected to. Unless if it's because of duress, mutar. Okay, the Gemara is going to define what is this, what is the danger, and what is the duress. If this is a separate law, that if the bride and groom let's say they get married on Friday during the day, or if they got married before but didn't consummate the marriage yet, and it turns out to be Friday night, and that's going to be the first time that they have bi'ah together, then the rabbis do not allow that. Rather, we separate the bride and the groom, and they cannot sleep together on Friday night, because that would be inflicting a wound. Inflicting a wound is prohibited on Shabbat and causing bleeding. And therefore, and that's what would happen if she is a betula the first time that they are together. So therefore, that's prohibited. The first time bi'ah is prohibited on Friday night. And so if that should come about, they have to separate and wait till Saturday night. All right, that's the end of the Baraita. Now we're going to ask, my sakana, what is the sakana that happened? What is the time of danger that they were prohibited? Maybe there was a law and that said any betula who gets married on Wednesday, so the government knew that this was a law and they didn't want it. It was an anti-Jewish persecution. Usually when it says sakana, and the rabbis refer to, it's probably talking about Hadrianic persecutions during the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, when the Roman government, Emperor Hadrian, was confronting this rebellion and instituted both before the rebellion and continued after, a number of anti-Jewish pieces of legislation. So it could be during that they wanted to prevent these Jewish religious weddings. So they said, if you get married on Wednesday, you'll be killed, because they're saying no weddings, no Jewish weddings, and they all happen to be on Wednesday because that was the rule, that they're all on Wednesday. So therefore the people said, we can't get married on Wednesday. That's when the police are out looking to see. So you know what? We'll do it on Tuesday. What are we going to not get married at all? And the rabbis were like, okay, fine. Now we ask, Nahagu legame niakre. But if that's the reason, if anyone who made a wedding on Wednesday was killed, then what do you mean the people adopted a custom? The rabbi should come and say, well, we're not going to kill ourselves for marriages. They should have abolished the rule that marriages are on Wednesday. Forget about the rule altogether. What do you mean that the rabbis were passive and the people did it themselves? So that can't be it. Amar Rabba d'amri betula niset b'yom revi'i tiba'el lehegmon techila. So rather, maybe it was something that wasn't life-threatening, but still bad, that this was a common thing to do in various points in history and cultures, that anyone, the rule of the government was anyone a betula who gets married on Thursday, the bride has to go and be basically raped by the hegmon, by the Roman governor or general first. The Roman general would have first rights on the wedding night. And so this was a terrible thing, and the people did not want their brides to have to undergo this terrible this terrible persecution. And so then they snuck and they made their weddings on Tuesday. There's other evidence that they wouldn't send out invitations. They would just send secret messages that the wedding is happening here and there, and that way the generals would not find out what it was, when it was, and they wouldn't come and take the bride. So we ask, Hai sakana onesu. Wait a second, this was supposed to be sakana, means danger. Usually that means a mortal danger. But this, although it's a pretty bad thing, it's not life and death danger. It's ones, it's coercion, it's rape. So why are you calling it sakana? And the answer is mishum deika sinuot masra nafshayhu liktala v'atyan lideh sakana, because there would be modest women who would say, I'd rather die than submit to this general. And so it would lead to life and death danger. Even though that's not the halacha, they didn't have to kill themselves rather than be passive and submit to the general. And nevertheless, some women wanted to, and they wanted to be pristine, or they thought that was the law, and therefore they would have themselves killed. So that's why we called it a time of mortal danger. Now, we say, why don't the sages make classes and teach the brides that if it's out of your hands, if it's a case of coercion, then you're permitted. You're permitted to go back to your husband, and you don't have to kill yourself because of that. So why don't, we make kala classes and we teach them all the laws and tell them, listen, if it should happen that the general comes and takes you, don't kill yourself. So the answer is ika perusot vika name kohanot. We don't want to do that because, again, the opposite danger. There are perusot, there are promiscuous women. If you tell them, listen, in the case of rape, you're permitted to submit yourself and you can even go back to your husband. That is the law. A woman who commits adultery on purpose cannot go back to her husband, but if she's coerced, then she can. So these promiscuous women will take this as an excuse and they will go be promiscuous willingly with other men, and they'll come and say, "Oh no, it wasn't my fault. I was forced." So we don't want to tell them this leniency because they may take advantage of it. Also, there may be women who are married to kohanim. They're going to marry a kohen, and if they are taken, even by force, they can no longer be with the kohen. That's the law. Kohen, once they did kiddushin, and so once she is with another man for any reason, even beyond her control, cannot go back, and so that will still be a problem. Maybe they will say, "We'd rather die than go back, and rather die rather than lose out on being with our groom." Okay, so that's why we don't teach them this, and that's why sometimes it did come to mortal danger. Anyway, we call it sakana. Now we ask, vili akre, if in fact that was true, that sometimes it was leading to mortal danger, so how come the rabbis did not uproot it altogether? And the answer is shemada abida debatla v'takantad rabbanan mikame shemada lo akrinan. Interesting principle that this persecution will eventually be canceled. It was in fact canceled after Emperor Hadrian. Then the Roman government settled down, and those Hadrianic decrees were gone. So this is only a temporary problem. And whereas the law that the rabbis made that wedding should have betulot should get married on Wednesday, this was already there from before the persecution, and therefore we are not going to abolish something that was before, that was older, that's going to last a long time. I think this is on the one hand, it's kind of like, well, yeah, but what about those people in between that had to be undergo rape and or possibly death, right? So wouldn't it be good just to save those people? It's hard to know if this happened in every single wedding or if the Roman generals only came around once in a while. It was only a small chance. It's hard to know. But I think the statement does show the kind of fortitude and bravery and long thinking of the rabbis that said, the Romans, they come and go, and we are going to stand steadfast. And even though that means some tremendous amount of sacrifice and self-determination in the short term, nevertheless, our laws are going to win out against their laws. Our perseverance will help us through any of their persecution. Okay, so Quite an interesting statement. Okay, now we wonder, wait, how does this help that the people said, okay, we're going to make a wedding on Tuesday, and then the general won't come? Won't the general figure out if he comes on Wednesday and there's no one or very few people are making weddings? He'll realize this and come on Tuesday. And he says, no, he's not going to know for sure. The general doesn't want to come out on a trip just to see, is there a wedding? Maybe there's no wedding this week. Where is it? He wants to know for sure. So when it was always done on Wednesday, and these were public weddings, so he would know for sure if he came to the village, he would find a bride that he can take. But once they changed it, then it was not sure, and the general, he's evil, but he's also lazy. So that was helpful. Ubesheni lo yichnos, and then the Baraita continues, said, not on Monday. The rabbis objected to marrying on Monday, unless v'mechamata ones mutar, unless it was because of duress or coercion. So what are we talking about here? We're going to see two answers, only one today that we'll end with. My ones ilem hadamaran hatam karela sakana v'hacha karele ones. If it's what we've been talking about already, that the general comes and he forces himself upon the brides, well, we already called that danger, and here we're calling it coercion. So it must be something different. Over there, we said the people did it on their own, and the rabbis were okay with it, but the rabbis were not proactive and to change it themselves. But here we use a more lenient word that says, don't do it on Monday unless it's because of coercion, then mutar. So that sounds like even lecha techila. Rava explains it's when a general and his army came to the city. And when they come, they expect the city where they are to feed them. And so now they're going to come and they're going to see this wedding ceremony and they're going to take everything for themselves. So now we try to clarify exactly what is the timing of this case. If this army, these troops are coming, but they're going to leave, liakev. So then delay the whole wedding till next week. Why do you have to make it on Monday? Just make it the next Wednesday. So lasricha da'ateve kaba b'shlishi. Oh no, so that means they're coming and they are staying. So they're going to be here next week also, so there's no point in delaying it. So we ask, b'shlishi miha lichnos. We're assuming that they're coming on Wednesday, so I guess there's news that they're going to be coming. Why did you proceed and go all the way to Monday? Why not just get married on Tuesday? Why do you have to go all the way back? And the final answer is asperava dide b'shlishi ka'atu. It's because of the entourage or the scouts. The big army is behind. They send some scouts a day ahead to see where it would be a good place to encamp, where might there be supplies and food. And so the scouts, since the army is coming on Wednesday, the scouts already arrive on Tuesday. And when the scouts come and they see, oh, look at this wedding feast, this nice cake, this whole thing that you're making, they will already then confiscate everything, take it for themselves, and we won't be able to make a wedding not on Wednesday and not on Tuesday. And so therefore, if we know they're coming, then we will make the wedding on Monday. And in this case, the rabbi said, don't do it on Monday usually, but if it's because of a case of duress like this, you're not going to have a wedding ceremony, you're not going to have any food or supplies, then the rabbi said it's permitted. Okay, this is kind of a bit paradoxical that for a bigger, much more significant reason that the general may take the bride, they said the rabbis didn't do anything, and they said, okay, fine, if you want to go on Tuesday, we won't object. But for not having a wedding cake and not having food, they said, oh yeah, make it Monday. So maybe for this reason as well as others, there is a second answer, and which we will see next. And the second answer is talking about a case where a close relative, a parent of the bride or the groom dies, and so this we'll see on the following daf. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'Amen.